Well, as usual, secondary scoring, at least this year and last year, secondary scoring has been an issue. Early in the Oilers season, there has been no goals from the bottom six forwards. The Edmonton Oilers relying a lot on a handful of forwards, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, James Neal, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, chief among them, if that's the only ones. Matty, there is no easy solution to this problem, is there?
There's no panacea, I don't think so. I think when you get bottom six forwards, you realize that their MO is that they check well and they score every now and then. There's not too many bottom six forwards that you can count on to score 15 goals. I think the Oilers, like most teams, you go into a season saying, okay, I think this guy can score 12. I think this guy can score 10. Because he has before. Marcus Granlund scored 19, but I don't think you're going to get 19 out of Marcus Granlund. Josh Archibald, you count on him scoring 12. I don't think it works that way, but certainly you can't be almost out of the first month of the season with a whole lot of zeros in your bottom six. Not only zeros in terms of goals, but zeros in terms of points. Like there's not even, Yurchiko's got 2 assists, but there's an awful lot of those forwards don't even have a point yet, and they're playing every game. And they're not playing 6 minutes a game, they're playing 10 minutes a game, at least. And that's not good enough. Now, where you can find bottom six players better than the Oilers' bottom six players in terms of offense, I think you're just shuffling the deck myself. I think, if you're Ken Holland, maybe you're looking at the Vancouver Canucks and you're seeing that Sven Baertschi's playing in the minors because he makes too much money. And he has some sort of history of being a goal scorer, and maybe you can go to the Vancouver Canucks and say, he makes a lot of money, but if you want to pay part of it, we'll pay part of it, and we'll trade you something that you don't have. Maybe a better role player, but his hands are tied too.
And you talk about trade being a potential. I mean, you could break up the Draisaitl-McDavid combo on the top line, try to spread your scoring around that way by having centers McDavid, Draisaitl, and Nugent-Hopkins on the third line and surround them with the wingers. Hopefully they would act as catalysts for offense. You could, call up players from Bakersfield to see if that gives you a spark. Of course, these are all things that will probably get tried at some point if this trend continues.
Well, there's only so many ways you can get more scoring. And you brought up, making 3 centers with McDavid, Draisaitl, and Nugent-Hopkins, but then who do they play with? They're playing centers. They're really good centers, but they don't have much to work with on the wing in terms of scoring ability. Now you could still play Zach Kassian with Connor McDavid, but Zach doesn't have a history of being a 20-goal scorer, and as good as he's played, counting on him to suddenly score 20 or 25 isn't going to work either, I don't think. So, and calling guys up from the minors, if your mandate is that you want your young players to play all the time in the minors and then be too good for the minor league team before you're called up to the NHL team, that would go against what you just said. If you're calling up Yamamotos and Bensons and such, just because the guys in your own roster can't score, and you bring them up, then what do you do with the guys on your own roster that can't score? There's only so many players you can carry, so.
I suppose it depends how desperate you are not to waste McDavid and Draisaitl's prime years. They're at the peak of their game. They're 2 of the arguably top 10, if not top 5 players in the NHL right now. You got to do something. Otherwise, your 50-goal man from last year and your 110-plus point scoring McDavid, that didn't get you in the playoffs last year either.
No, it didn't. But I'm a firm believer in that you should at least have one line that the other team is deathly afraid of, and that's deathly afraid of McDavid and Draisaitl playing. And if you're not playing the same team over and over and over again, like at the playoffs, you can play one line because you're not playing the same team all over again. That's just putting checkers on those 2 players and say, okay, let's have somebody else beat us. So in regular season, I think you can still get by with Draisaitl and McDavid on one line, and once you get to the playoffs, as a couple of years ago, where you put Draisaitl on another line against Ryan Getzlaf, and that worked very well for the Oilers in the Anaheim series. So I don't know what you do. You hate to say same old, but it is the same old. It's almost like the Oilers have the 3 or 4 good players, and then the rest of them are supposed to carry the water and chop some wood, but don't count on them, building a barn. They're not gonna really help out. They can stop goals, and they can when their shifts are out there, they can keep the puck in the other team's end, but they're not going to score. And I remember there's a lot of what you see from the bottom six and what we used to see from George Larac, say. It's really strong on the boards. You couldn't take the puck off him. But George didn't score too many goals. He kept the puck in the other team's end, but if you're counting on George to score a goal, apart from the fact that he beat up most people as a protector, you weren't going to get that. And this bottom six, keep the puck in the other team's end, kill some time, but there's no goals. And there has to be some goals every 4 or 5 games, or you're not going to win. And Florida had 3 goals from their bottom 6 in Sunday, and they won the hockey game 6-2.
And could this be a matter of, obviously this has got to be the long game. Ken Holland has said we're not bringing up players. We're going to let them stay in the minors until they're ready to make the jump to the NHL. So if indeed we do see some movement into the lineup, that won't be necessarily even this year. It's a step-by-step thing, perhaps. It's the long game.
Well, if you had one of your prospects playing in the minors, and say the Bakersfield had played 8 games, and that player had 12 points, and he had 6 goals in 8 games, like say Yamamoto or somebody, then you could say, you know what, we're gonna play him with Nugent Hopkins on a line, say, and see how that goes. But they're playing okay in the minors. They're offensive guys, but they're not exactly lighting it up down there. So I'd keep them there. I mean, you just got to hope that some of your role players score some goals, and you score some 5-on-5 goals. There's only 5 Oiler forwards have scored even strength this year. The usual McDavid, Draisaitl, Neal, and Zach Kassian, and a 4-on-4 goal from Nygaard with Gaetan Haas. And Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has played well, but his goal came in a power play, so he doesn't have an even strength goal, and not enough 5-on-5 even strength goals. And that's going to kill you in the long run too, not just the role players, but the star players, if not enough players help out 5-on-5.
Now you brought up the idea of a trade, maybe the Canucks example, maybe Sven Barchi might be available. But when do the Oilers seriously consider, beating around the trade market? It's hard to make an in-season trade, particularly a major one for a scoring winger, which is what the Oilers desperately need. That's likely a summertime thing. However, it does happen. Teams like the Pittsburgh Penguins do somehow seem to be able to make trades during the season.
They do. Most teams general managers like to get to the 20-game mark with their team, which is a couple of weeks into November, and then they say, okay, here's what I got, here's what I don't have, and that's when the trades, if there are any in-season trades before the trading deadline. Ken Holland's been around the block 100 times, so I'm sure he's on the phone to teams saying, you have an offensive guy here, he's maybe spinning his wheels here, what would you want back, and how is the contract situation going to work? So he's looking. I'm sure he can't. He's a smart guy. You just can't have the same guy scoring goals all the time. But most trades, as you pointed out, happen in the summer when there's draft choices in play, and you trade draft choices and prospects for a star player or a really good player on another team, and it's a long way from June. So we'll see. I mean, if the Oilers on the 15th of November are still 5 games over 500, Ken Holland's looking at his roster going, okay, we don't have much supporting scoring, but we're still winning. So until all of a sudden we're 500, then I got to get some offense. But to this point, he's still 5 games over 500, so I don't think he's exactly panicking.